Hey guys, it's Tarkus from Tarkus Gaming, and today I'm going to show you how to make custom heroes with custom abilities that the user can choose. This is similar to maps such as Custom Hero Line Wars and any other map along those lines where you choose a hero, and then after you've chosen that hero, you can go through and choose abilities for that hero. So for right now, I have this hero. What I'm going to do is choose 4 of these abilities. And you'll see right now, if I don't have any points to spend on abilities, and if I go in here, there's just one placeholder that's in here at the moment. Now once I go down to the bottom here, if I walk into the circle of power, I have a trigger that then teleports the user, the player, and automatically learns those abilities that you had chosen from the stores. Now let me hop into the editor and I'll show you how to do this. So I've created a new map here, and the first thing I'm going to do is place down a circle of power. This is simply just to trigger the script. It's actually not required. And then I'm going to go ahead and choose a hero to put down for myself to run this through as a test. And I'll just choose the Blood Mage for right now. And then I'll put down a starting place just so that the game knows where to start us. This is all you'll need in the actual map in order to do this tutorial. Obviously, if you're doing this in a map you've already created, you'll have all your hero and everything already done. But now let me hop into the object editor and I'll show you how to do this. The first thing you're going to want to do is go ahead and create a couple of abilities. So I'm going to hop in under the hero abilities, and for right now, let's just choose Blizzard. So I take Blizzard here. You can actually use, for the initial one, this default skill, this default ability. Now, what you're going to have to do is create a placeholder after this, which I'll show you in a second. But to keep in mind here, the placeholder has to have the same level skip requirement, and the same number of levels. So this is easiest done if all of the abilities that you're using have the same level skip requirement and the same number of levels. For right now, I'll just leave it at 3, but depending on what you're doing, you can bump that up, bump that down, however you want to do it. So Blizzard, we can actually leave this as is, but if you wanted to change any of these, create your own custom abilities, feel free to do so. So now that we've chosen Blizzard, we're going to create a new custom ability based off of Blizzard. And what we're going to do is, now that we have this open, we're just going to change this to a placeholder. And then we'll just get rid of the description. And the name itself will also be placeholder. Now, since we created this directly from Blizzard, we can check, and the level skip requirement and the levels are obviously the same because they were created from that ability. But if you're doing multiple abilities, just go ahead and check to make sure that these are equal to the base ability that you're using. So now that we have those abilities set up, we can go ahead and go back to the unit, and we'll go to the Blood Mage because that's who we're using. And under the hero abilities, we're going to get rid of all the ones he currently has and just go ahead and add in the placeholder that we had created. Now, if you want to let a hero have 4 abilities, similar to what I showed you in that last one, then you just have to give 4 placeholder abilities. So you can just go in here again and add another placeholder. For right now, we'll do 2 just to show you how to do the multiples. Click OK, and now this hero has 2 placeholder abilities. Now, the last thing we have to do before we create the actual triggers is create one more ability. So if we go back to abilities, this is the key ability that lets all this be possible. If you go into neutral hostile and you go under the hero abilities, there is one ability called engineering upgrade. So in the triggers, there is a trigger to learn a skill, but that only works for unit skills. And so it'll teach the unit, the hero, that ability, but only at level 1, and you can't level it up. By using engineering upgrade, or a ability based off of engineering upgrade, you actually allow it to be added to the level up screen there, so that the hero actually acquires that skill. So I'm going to go into engineering upgrade, and I'm going to create a new one, and I'm going to call it Blizzard Adder, just so that I know that this is the ability that's going to add Blizzard to my hero. For this one, the level skip requirement and levels do not matter. But what does matter, usually I'll bump it down to level 1, simply just to reduce the number of information required. Now what you have to do is under ability upgrade 1. You're going to have to go ahead and add the ability that you want first, and then the placeholder ability second. And I'll explain why this works in a minute once we get to the trigger, but it's very important that it's ability you want the hero to gain and then placeholder. Now for the rest of these, it's best to keep them populated. You don't have to, but sometimes the game can bug out if you have these empty. So it's best to keep them updated and just leave them as abilities that you know the hero's not going to have. That way it won't affect them at all. So now that we have this set up, we can go ahead, and this is everything we need to create the triggers. Sorry, one last thing we're going to want to do before we create the triggers is we're going to create an item that they can purchase from the stores. This can be anything. I just like to use something that's, not usable and something that's not going to give them any effects or anything like that. So if I go under miscellaneous here, we can go ahead and just use a human flag or anything. Any item that you want as long as it's not usable. And we're going to go ahead and call it Blizzard because that's the ability that we're working on here. Once that's created, you'll want to change the interface icon to be the ability that you're going to use. So go to abilities and go ahead and go to Blizzard. And that way, once they have it in their inventory, that's what it's going to look like. Go ahead and make sure it can be sold by merchants because I assume you're going to be using a store to sell it to them. And it can be sold to merchants in case they want to sell it back. Here you'd set up your gold cost. Normally what I do is I set it as a price of 1, and then I give the player, say, 4 gold so that they can only buy 4 abilities. You'll also want to make sure that the stock maximum is high enough that multiple players can buy it. The replenish interval is low, and the stock initial is the same as the maximum to make sure that they have everything that you need to start with. So with all that done, the only other thing you'll want to do is, normally I change the basic tooltip to be Blizzard, as well as the description. And then the extended tooltip, what I'll often do is I'll go back to abilities here. We're using Blizzard, so I'll just take down this extended tooltip and add it into here so that people can see what they're buying. Now that the item's set up, we can actually go into the trigger. Okay, so now it is time to set up the triggers. First things first, I'm going to go into the initialization, and I'm just going to go ahead and delete all of these because I don't want it running victory conditions or anything like that that'll stop us from testing this. And what I'm actually going to do is, because I don't have a store set up to give the heroes, for these heroes to buy the items, I'm just going to give it to them right away. So if I go to create item for hero, I went ahead and created another one as well. I just did the exact same thing, but this time for Bash. So I'll go ahead and give them Blizzard, and I will also go ahead and give them the Bash. So now they have 2 items. The reason why I did 2 items, the reason I did 2 items is to show you that you can do multiple items. The reason I did 2 different ones is because this does not work. They cannot learn the same ability more than once. So it has to be different abilities each time. Now that that initialization is set up, I'm going to go ahead and create the actual trigger to teach them the abilities. So I'll go ahead and call it ability choice. And for the event, I'm going to have it when a unit is within range, when a unit comes within 5 of, and I'll choose this circle of power that I put down earlier, just as a trigger point. Obviously, you can do this any way that you want. So now for the actions. For the actions, you're going to want to start with a for loop. So go ahead and choose for each integer a, do multiple actions, and we're going to go from 1 to 6. The reason we're going from 1 to 6 is because this is going to check their inventory, and there are 6 slots in their inventory. So now in the loop, you're going to want to do an if then else, and we'll go ahead and set the if to be a item type comparison, and we're going to say item type of item carried by hero. So item carried by hero, and this will obviously be the triggering unit because that's who you want to affect. And then in slot, and for the slot, you're going to want to go ahead and choose for loop integer a because that's the loop that you have running here, integer a. So it's going to go from 1 to 6 and check each of those slots. in the triggering unit, and it'll check it for whatever you put here. And for this first one, we'll go ahead and put Blizzard. So now it's saying look for an item type carried by the triggering unit in slots 1 to 6 equal to Blizzard. If that's true, then what we're going to want to do is go ahead and add an ability to this unit. So if I go unit, and go down to add ability. The ability that we're going to want to add is the adder that we created. So for right now, we have the Blizzard adder, and we're going to want to add that to the triggering unit. And then we'll go ahead and do the same thing not the same thing. Now we're going to go ahead and remove that ability. So if I go down to unit, and instead of adding the ability, we remove the ability, and we're going to want that same one, the Blizz adder, to triggering unit. So now what happens is if they're carrying this item, it'll add this Blizzard adder to them and then remove it. Now the reason this works is if we go into the object editor here and we look at the abilities, and we'll go ahead and look at the Blizzard adder. What happens when this is added is this ability will try to upgrade Blizzard to the placeholder. The problem is we don't have Blizzard, so what happens is this essentially does nothing. You add this ability and it does nothing. However, for the second step, we're removing this. And when you remove this ability, it tries to do exactly what it did before, but in reverse. So now it says, okay, if we have placeholder, we're going to downgrade it to Blizzard. And now that we actually do have placeholder this time, it'll simply replace the placeholder ability with the Blizzard ability. And this is what allows you to add it to a learnable ability. So we'll go ahead, go back here, and the last thing you'll want to do is to go to item, and you're going to want to remove the item that is carried by the hero. Hero again will be the triggering unit in slot, and we'll go again for the for loop integer a. So it's saying if they do have it, add the ability, remove the ability, and then go ahead and get rid of that item. Now I'll quickly go ahead and just copy this and do the exact same thing for bash because I created that as well. And that's the other one we're going to be testing. And then once I have this added, we can go ahead and try this out and demonstrate how it works. So if I go blizz adder to bash adder and then remove it the same. So now that the hero has these two, we should be able to go ahead and try this out. Now that we're in here and it's loaded, of course I used the flag, which was a bad idea because they're on the ground there. So don't use the flag, fun fact. I have these items in my inventory now, and you'll see if I go into hero abilities, all I have is this placeholder ability. However, if I go and step in this circle of power, the two items have now disappeared from my inventory, and I now have Blizzard and I have Bash, which are the two that I was trying to learn. So everything worked perfectly. The only thing I would recommend is, if you noticed before, I had the skill point before I learn these. Normally what I do is once the heroes spawn, I remove that first skill point so they can't accidentally purchase the placeholder ability. And then I'll go ahead and add that skill point back once they've stepped on this square so that they can learn the abilities again. Anyway, that's all for today. Thank you for watching, and I hope this was helpful for you. Don't forget to like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. And here's to a lot of fun times when Reforged comes out. Thank you very much.